When Beverly was summoned to the office of the jewelry store manager, she honestly had no idea what was going on. She worked as a saleswoman for a little over a year, and the management never once had an issue with her. Having opened the door, Beverly walked in timidly and immediately felt Mr. Allen's hostile gaze on her. "So what? Do you prefer to just tell me everything yourself? Or should I ask the deceived buyer to come in?" The manager began without explaining. "I don't understand what you're talking about. I didn't deceive anyone." The woman stammered on every word. "Beverly, you don't need to lie to me. The amount of damages you've caused is over $300,000. And don't even get me started on the hit our reputation had to take. The ring you sold turned out to be a fake one. Thus, you'll have to reimburse the store for this amount," said the manager, eyeing the saleswoman. "Excuse me, but where do I get this kind of money?" Beverly asked, having a hard time holding back her tears. The manager's face radiated cold hostility, and the woman realized that she shouldn't expect to get even the tiniest bit of compassion from him. "Beverly, I advise you to pay the store back as soon as possible, because it's getting a new owner soon, a gold miner from Alaska, a stern man. He definitely won't play around with you and will just go to the police. And if you fail to return the money, I will personally make sure that no one ever hires you again, not even to sell potatoes at the veggie stand," Mr. Allen added, making it clear with all his appearance that the conversation was over. The unfortunate woman left the office with tears streaming down her face. The amount of $300,000 seemed incredible to Beverly, so on her way home, she kept trying to figure out where she could get the money. The thing was that the woman was caring for her sick grandmother, who was like a mother to her, having raised her since the day Beverly's parents died in a car accident. The old woman had been seriously sick for a year now, and almost all the money Beverly earned she spent on her grandmother's meds. All these thoughts were spinning in the head of the young woman, who for some unknown reason got accused of theft. But Beverly knew that she hadn't done anything wrong, because she was just doing her job. She didn't break any rules. Racking her head over this issue, the woman tried to remember every detail of that ill-fated day. It all started when an important-looking man came into the jewelry store. He carefully studied all the displays and then opted for an expensive white gold diamond ring. At that moment, Francis Miller came in. He was the deputy manager of the jewelry store. Seeing the prospective buyer, he gestured for Beverly to complete the purchase, while he was the one to get the key and take out the ill-fated ring from the display. Then, Francis placed it in the velvet box and personally handed it to the happy customer, who'd already paid for the purchase. All this happened in front of Beverly, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't figure out how the fake ring got into the display window. In fact, the rules dictated that the salesperson was supposed to get the item from the show window and hand it to the buyer. But Beverly and Francis had a friendly relationship until recently. Thanks to the fake ring scandal, their friendship ended just as suddenly as it began. Shortly before this fateful day, Francis began to pay more attention to the woman, bringing her flowers and gifts, as well as helping with the meds for her grandmother. Beverly was very flattered, of course. She was on cloud 9. But when the scandal with the fake ring happened, Francis Miller immediately pulled away from the woman, as if she was sick with some highly contagious disease. Beverly got pulled out of her anxious thoughts by the voice of some old woman at the bus stop. "Excuse me, young lady, your bag is open." Beverly turned around in surprise and saw that the elderly woman was right. Having an alarming premonition, Beverly put her hand in her handbag and was petrified to realize that her wallet wasn't in there. "Oh God, what did I do to deserve all this? Why are you so angry with me?" whispered the unfortunate woman, who started crying without even realizing it. Lowering her head, Beverly walked home, as it turned out that she didn't even have the money for the bus. Being in a state of mental anguish bordering on despair, Beverly didn't even notice when she stepped onto the road. And then the woman heard the screeching sound of car brakes and felt a slight push that knocked her over on her back. Beverly woke up in the hospital. Squinting from the blinding bright light of the lamp, the woman heard a pleasant male voice nearby. Mild concussion and some bruises. The patient was incredibly lucky. Given what had happened, she got off easy. Beverly opened her eyes and saw that she was lying in a hospital bed in the trauma department, and in front of her bed there was a whole bunch of doctors and nurses. The woman tried to raise herself on her elbows, but she immediately felt the pain in her muscles and got dizzy. "Don't rush, Miss Simmons. You'll have to wait a bit. It's too early for you to get up," the nurse said and straightened the patient's pillow, which had tilted to the side. "What about my grandmother? She's probably worried," Beverly asked, surprised at how quiet and unnatural her voice sounded. In response, the nurse hastened to assure the patient that her grandmother was already notified of what had happened. Beverly smiled gratefully and turned her head to the left to see a bouquet of red roses standing on the bedside table. "Oh, that's from the driver that hit you. He's very worried. He's been here since the early morning," the nurse explained, intercepting the patient's gaze. Beverly grimaced and closed her eyes warily. She didn't really like roses, but preferred ordinary wildflowers. They also reminded Beverly of the roses that Frances Miller had given her shortly before the incident with the fake diamond ring. Suddenly, Beverly's mind singled out one particular memory, which ignited a spark of disturbing doubts in her soul. One day, as the woman was entering Frances's office, she accidentally touched the folders with all kinds of documents lying on the edge of the table. And when the deputy manager rushed to pick them up, a strange bag fell out of his pocket. It had that same diamond ring in it, the one that turned out to be the fake later. It didn't seem strange to Beverly at the time because Frances Miller was her boss and he was an employee at the jewelry store. But now, in the light of recent events, this incident didn't seem all that innocent anymore. At that moment, the door opened and a pleasant-looking man about 30 years old came inside. Without taking his eyes off Beverly, he came closer and said, "Good morning, Mrs. Simmons. My name is Stephen Parker. I'm so glad to see that you woke up. Please forgive me. I should have been more careful on the road, but so many things went wrong that day." "And not just for you," Beverly said sadly. "You see, I recently came from the north. Beautiful places, I have to say. Unfortunately, when I returned home, I got a letter from my wife telling me that she had filed for divorce. Sure, it wasn't all that unexpected, but still, this kind of unpleasant news shook me deeply. I understand that it's no excuse. I did hit a person," Stefan added sadly. "Come on, stop being so hard on yourself. The most important thing is that everyone's alive and doing fine. Believe me, this isn't the worst thing that could have happened in life." Beverly tried to make the man feel better. Stefan approached the woman's bed and gratefully shook her hand. Looking at this pretty but very sad girl, the man couldn't resist asking, "I'm sorry, if I may. I could be mistaken, but it feels like there's something bothering you. You can share it with me. Trust me, it gets easier when you talk about it. Maybe I could even help you," Stefan added, feeling that the woman really needs his support. Beverly looked at the driver, and having thought for a bit, she decided to share with the man all the pain and despair that she's been feeling this past day. Stefan patiently listened to the woman and didn't say a word during her entire story. His face went through all kinds of emotions, from lighting up with the spark of understanding and hope to getting darker with the shadow of judgment. As he was saying goodbye, he wished Beverly to get well soon and assured her that he would cover all the expenses of her grandmother's treatment and care. Stefan vaguely hinted to the woman that he would also try and deal with the complicated case of slander against her. Beverly smiled greatly and added that he didn't need to worry about it because everything had already been decided and she'd have to reimburse the store for the amount of $300,000 anyway. The girl spent 5 days at the hospital and Stefan visited her every day, always bringing her flowers. Stefan told Beverly a lot about the northern states where he'd spent most of his life. He enthusiastically shared with the woman the stories of his adventures in Alaska, as well as his impressions of the place. Before they even realized what was happening, the young people already started getting feelings for each other, which got stronger with every minute they spent together. When Beverly was discharged from the hospital, her face still had visible bruises from when she fell face down on the pavement during the accident. But remembering that she had to reimburse the jewelry store for damages, the woman used makeup to conceal her bruises and went to work. Beverly was also very worried at how the new owner of the store would react to the situation of the disappearing ring and the sale of a fake one to the customer. And as soon as the woman came into work, her partner said that the new owner of the store was waiting for her in the manager's office. And so it begins. Now at least I won't have to wonder what will happen anymore. Beverly thought, and treaded to Mr. Allen's office. But when she opened the door, she was so surprised that she nearly fainted. That was because as she entered the office, she saw that sitting in the boss's chair was no one else but her new friend Stefan. And in front of him stood Mr. Allen and the deputy manager, Francis Miller. Seeing Beverly, the man smiled encouragingly and then winked at her and asked her to sit down in one of the chairs in the office. "So, what do you say now, Mr. Miller? Do you still insist on your version of the events, or are you ready to tell the truth? Please note that my people have already gathered all the information about you, and so it would be useless to deny anything," Stefan said, folding his hands in front of him. "I don't know what you're talking about, sir. It's all the saleswoman's fault. It was Beverly who made the deal, not me," Francis replied without batting an eye. "Yes, that's true, but it was you who handed the ring to the customer. My people have found out that you're a gambler, Mr. Miller, and a very unlucky one at that, because you owed a huge amount to one of the casinos, and yesterday you somehow managed to repay your debt in full. Moreover, that amount was miraculously equal to the value of that very ring that you replaced with a fake one, thereby framing the store saleswoman. Do you understand what I'm talking about? You're a scammer, Mr. Miller, and you will have to reimburse the damages to the store. And you, Mr. Allen, I'm giving you a reprimand for negligence in your work," Stefan said to the disconcerted store manager. Having heard the words of the new owner, Beverly felt that a huge weight was lifted off her shoulders. Tears sparkled in the woman's eyes, and feeling incredibly grateful to Stefan, she was ready to kiss him right there and then. However, Beverly did it a little later, when the man hugged her tightly and whispered in her ear, "I love you."